There you go. Good afternoon, everyone. As we say in Annapolis, for the record, I'm Delegate Leslie Lopez, and I'm here in my capacity as chair of the Metro Washington Area Committee. We are here for our second and third. Oh, there's people here who can't hear? Sure. Yeah, okay. I'm here in my capacity as chair of the Metro Washington Area Committee, which is part of the Montgomery County Delegation's General Assembly work. We are here for our second of three public listening sessions. The first one was held over in Rockville. The third, just for the sake of housekeeping, is going to be virtual. It is Wednesday, August 2nd from 6 to 8 p.m. It is open to any type of public testimony that's within 2 minutes. Same rule for today, 2 minutes. People who cannot attend that public session, or perhaps the today's and the previous one, are open to submit written testimony. And I do have a packet of written testimony, I think, from some of the folks here today. So thank you for providing written remarks as well. If you are interested in learning more about this process, but perhaps not providing testimony, I want to tell you about the upcoming times when you can watch the work group meetings. Our next meeting will be Friday, July 28th, 9:30 to 1:30. Tuesday, August 8th, 9:30 to 1:30. Thursday, August 24th, 9:30 to 1:30. And there will likely be meetings in September as well. We haven't set those yet. Those can be viewed via live stream. Again, written testimony is great if you want to provide anything before October 15th. October 15th is the cutoff for when the work group will be providing information to the General Assembly and also to the County Council for them to review and decide what to implement. And so today, I'm very excited to have, I believe, at least 15 people coming to provide testimony. We're going to go to the folks who have joined us via Microsoft Teams first. Again, you will have 2 minutes to provide remarks, and then we will go to people who have come in person today. So the lineup will be Matthew Bell, Cheryl Gannon, Mike English, Lisa Moreau, Stacy Sibler, and Linda Freeman, and we'll go in that order. So starting off with Matthew Bell.
Great. Good afternoon. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you for this opportunity to weigh in as part of this process. I appreciate the fact that you all are periodically looking at the best ways to run planning in county government. I'm an architect and an urban designer with Perkins Eastman in Washington, D.C. And I'm also a professor of architecture at the University of Maryland. And I have here today to sort of underscore my experience with the Montgomery County Planning Office, which has been, in my opinion, one of the best and most efficient and insightful and visionary groups that I have worked with in my professional experience. We work with a lot of different county agencies or city agencies. And, I can honestly say that Montgomery County is one of the places that has really terrific professionals, has had great leadership, and has been a partner in a lot of things we've done academically at the University of Maryland with Makeover Montgomery and also design studios that I've taught. I've been involved in two major master plans in the county. One was for Johns Hopkins Bellwood campus, and the other was for the Grosvenor Strathmore Square site along the Metro Red Line, and also been involved, as I said, with Makeover Montgomery and other initiatives. I have found in my 30 plus years of experience that the sort of leadership that places like Park and Planning are able to provide in a purest professional way without sort of being subject to the whims of, obviously things are always political, but too much subject to the whims of politics is really what you want. You want the best possible planning, leadership, and advice in terms of what you have there in Montgomery County. And my sense about the whole thing in front of you all, in terms of what decisions you have to make, is that my experience, the process in Montgomery County is timely, it's not broken, and I wouldn't try and fix it or make it improve in ways that it's already functioning. So I hope these remarks are helpful. My little alarm's going off saying that's 2 minutes, and I appreciate the ability for you all to invite me in to offer my opinion.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bell, for going first and getting us ready for today. Unlike the hearings that we have in Annapolis, it's a strict 2 minutes, and there's no Q&A between people who are providing testimony. But there is an open opportunity to further the discussion with follow-up remarks and follow-up questions that the work group members might have. And so we do have your contact information, Mr. Bell. And I know if anyone here has any follow-up questions, they'll be directing them your way. So thank you very much for kicking us off today. Next up, we have Cheryl Gannon.
Good afternoon. My name is Cheryl Gannon, and I'm a resident of Silver Spring. Overall, I urge this committee to balance efficiency with protecting and improving resident engagement through transparency and opportunities for meaningful input. Today, I'll summarize a few recommendations and submit a longer statement. First, the state should establish an Office of the People's Council for Planning and Land Use Matters under the MNC PPC. After all, it is a state-created entity. Although the county has had a statute in place for a People's Council, originally proposed by former County Executive Leggett, the council has failed to fund the position for over a decade. As the county's racial equity and social justice officer has noted, it is the less wealthy BIPOC communities that will suffer the most without the help of a People's Council. The planning process is incredibly complex, which is why the county, the planning board, the council, and developers all have land use attorneys to advise and advocate for them. I think it is reasonable to ask the state to create a People's Council. The state has the expertise to operate a People's Council office for planning and land use. Second, please make the list of registered lobbyists for MNC PPC accessible to the public online and add significant penalties to the statute for failure to register or report accurately. Currently, an MPIA request must be submitted to see the list of registered lobbyists. Despite the registration requirement, only a handful of lobbyists were registered as of a year ago. The purpose of lobbying registration laws are to promote transparency, accountability, and integrity in government. Achieving those goals will require open access to information and stronger enforcement. Third, public notice requirements must be strengthened. Last-minute changes in agendas, schedules, documents for plans under consideration limits the ability of the public to participate in an informed way. Plan changes should be disclosed to the public with adequate time for public input. I strongly urge the committee to create a prohibition against commissioners giving advance notice of policy initiatives to only select groups outside of the official notification channels. In 2020, I received such a private message and realized it was prior to the time that any of the civic associations had gotten notice of this initiative. The county faces significant challenges in creating adequate, affordable housing. A fair, transparent, and equitable process is the best way to achieve community consensus.
There you go. Thank you, Ms. Gannon. And if anyone needs to finish their sentence, I realize 2 minutes is a little bit tight, so that's absolutely fine. Next up, we have Mike English.
Yeah, thank you very much. Michael English. I live in downtown Silver Spring. And I understand, I know this came about largely due to some transparency concerns, ultimately it was back to some Open Meeting Act violations, which I'll add, we're hardly limited to the planning board and Montgomery Planning. There have been issues with that throughout the county government. So absolutely applaud any efforts to go and address those within and without the development review process. And I'm all for, community input to the degree that it's an important part of the process, but I do think, and I think what happened with Thrive is a good example of this, we had multiple years of outreach and opportunity for input, and it still wasn't enough for quite a few people. I think with the best of intentions, one of the best ways we can do to make sure that we don't get at more housing and that I love Montgomery County, it's diverse, but it's tremendously segregated, and a very good way to make sure that doesn't change is to make any zoning change, any incentive for housing, anything like that, need the approval 5, 6, 7 times of people in the immediate neighborhood that are currently exclusionarily zoned and are inaccessible to many. Many people that work on the state side will be familiar. I've lost count of the number of bills I've seen die on Sani Die because they simply get talked to death. And I don't think that active manipulation is a big part of this. I think that most people mean well, but you can absolutely stall things, make housing more expensive, make it more difficult to do. by giving people a lot of bites at the apple. And I think we need to find a balance. At some point, we need to be progressive by doing progressive things and not have a process that lets us feel progressive while enabling the, facilitation of the status quo. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. English. We have Lisa Moreau next from the Forest Glen Civic Association, but is also here as an individual.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thanks. My name is Lisa Morrell. I currently live on Myrtle Road, 1 block north of Forest Glen Road, and I want to speak about my experience with the medical center redevelopment at the northeast corner of Georgia Avenue and Forest Glen Road. Communication from the developer and the county has been a struggle since I moved to this area in 2001, and while I have more than a few frustrations and concerns about that alone, today I want to specifically concentrate on the lack of requirement for a comprehensive traffic study to be done by the developer with this size of development. The Forest Glen metro station opened in 1990, and the hospital and neighborhoods have been advocating for safer pedestrian travel for over 20 years. And a report in 2016 said there were 800 pedestrian trips per day at Georgia Avenue and Forest Glen, and over 80,000 vehicles crossed at this intersection. These numbers have only increased, and we continue to wait for the metro tunnel, which may or may not can happen in conjunction with this project, or for the Georgia Avenue redevelopment just south of this intersection. Common sense and demography alone make me struggle to understand the numbers that we were told by the developer at a recent meeting that are from, I quote, similar intersections worldwide. The traffic engineer stated that the size of their development will not have a significant impact on the traffic in our community based on this data. I am an engineer, and I question the validity of this data as reliable to ensure the safety of my community. I do not think the data matches the reality of the situation. This intersection edges a metro station, a church, an apartment building complex, a major beltway entrance and exit, and serves as the primary entrance for the emergency personnel, staff, and patients of one of the largest hospitals in Maryland, which serves 36,000 inpatients alone each year. This intersection also serves as the primary entrance and exit point for the neighborhoods between Belvedere to the north, Georgia, the Beltway on the south, Georgia Avenue on the west, and Sligo Creek Parkway on the east. Woodland Drive, which is the proposed main entrance site, connects directly to the side streets of almost 400 homes and is a cut-through between Tilton and Forest Glen Road for many going south, including emergency vehicles, because of the no left turn lane currently on Georgia Avenue getting to the hospital. This intersection has been designated as one of the worst in Maryland, and yet a comprehensive traffic study is not mandated to keep us safe. I believe a current traffic study for all developments at intersections at this level of congestion has to have a study, and safety has to be our number one priority. I thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Moreau. Up next, we have Stacy Sibler of Lurch, Early, and Brewer.
Good afternoon, Delegate Lopez and members of the Development Review Process Working Group. My name is Stacy Silver, and I'm a partner with the law firm of Lurch, Early, and Brewer. I'm here today on behalf of NAIOP DC Maryland, of which I serve on the board. NAIOP represents hundreds of companies that have been involved in creating the most innovative, sustainable mixed-use developments in Montgomery County and the region. Our members have the breadth of experience of working in multiple jurisdictions. I'd like to express NAIOP's strong belief that Park and Planning should remain an independent agency. Montgomery County benefits from Park and Planning's independent and sophisticated planning staff and board. This expertise has resulted in the production of first-in-class projects throughout the county. DPS, Park and Planning, and DOT have done an excellent job of looking inward and beginning to improve their processes. As with any process, there's always room for improvement by all agencies, but this may be accomplished through agency-implemented changes and possibly through state legislation where needed. We'll be submitting written comments, but the highlights of our recommendations include the following. For record plats, we suggest that Park and Planning should have record plats be approved by the Director of Park and Planning rather than having the board approve the plat. Agencies should consider separating the right-of-way permit process from the plat recordation process. On case intake, Park and Planning should implement a specific time frame for it to accept an application and thus deem it complete. Such review should be more efficient, leaving substantive comments to be raised during the application review process. For certified site plans, Park and Planning should set a set time within which it must certify the site plan. For permitting, DOT and DPS should integrate right-of-way permitting into a single process to the maximum extent feasible. For state highway, we suggest that legislation could be proposed to shorten SHA's review time of transportation studies from 45 to 30 days to mirror county DOT's review of such studies. We again strongly maintain that it's imperative that Park and Planning remain an independent agency. We are very concerned that if this changes, it will result in an unintended consequence of politicizing the review process, creating uncertainty, and as a result, impacting investment in the county. Thank you very much for your listening to our comments.
Thank you, Ms. Silber. And our last person who is here via Microsoft Teams is Brenda Freeman. Or maybe Brenda is not here. She is here? Okay.
Brenda. Okay, I'm on the phone. I had trouble with Microsoft.
It's okay. We hear you, Brenda.
Okay, good. I want to speak about two things. The first is the notification system, and then it's streamlining. Now, in the flow chart that we received, the applicant community meeting relies on post office and community associations to inform residents about upcoming meetings with this group, the development group, affecting their communities. However, the postal service notices are often delayed, and notices going to community associations don't reach stakeholders who aren't represented by them, which is likely the majority of people in Montgomery County. Now, there is something that could help. County council members regularly inform their constituents about various issues and events by email. Those emails could also inform them about upcoming planning meetings, that's step 2 in the flow chart, and identify a planning board content. Okay, so they would go from the council to the planning board. Another outreach effort to stakeholders is important in that step 5, the revisions and preparation plan part, before the staff report is written, so that people's comments can be reflected in the report. In the past, submitting comments to the planning board, while noted, were generally disregarded, in my view, if they ran counter to what seemed like a predetermined outcome. So an inclusive process could also address this, and as for streamlining, let's not let streamlining is a worthy goal, but it should not hamper public participation. Okay. Thank you. Okay, let me see.
Did you have a sentence you need to finish there, Ms. Freeman? Or was that it?
Did.
There we go. Okay, perfect. I just want to give you a chance to.
Okay, well, these two objectives of streamlining and public participation should not be at odds if there's effort made to work together. Thank you, Brenda Freeman, Silver Spring, Maryland resident.
There we go. That was a good close, Brenda. I just wanted to make sure you got your fair moment there. Perfect. Thank you. All right. Well, I appreciate everyone who is joining us via Teams today. Now we'll move to the in-person feedback. We have a handful of people who are here today who have signed up, and then several people who have come today that once we get through the people who have signed up, we'll see what our time looks like, and we can provide those who've, the walk-ins, so to speak, an opportunity to give their 2 minutes as well. So let's start with Elizabeth Joyce. And then the lineup will go Casey Anderson, Kimlin Prasad, Karen Metchis, Dennis O'Brien, Lloyd Gersey, and Daniel either Maher or Mayer. There we go. Okay, that will be our lineup. And Ms. Joyce, whenever you would like to start.
Okay. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak to you today. I am a longtime resident of Silver Spring, like so many of us, and I'm happy to be here today. I want to thank you, Delegate Lopez, for initiating these proceedings and sponsoring HB 778, the Truth and Transparency Act, which increases accountability for the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission and the Montgomery County Planning Board. These agencies operate under a nearly 100-year-old charter that affects only 2 Maryland counties, including ours, and needs to be updated and probably replaced. Today's focus is how to streamline the development review process. But before doing that, we need to apply truth and transparency standards to this and all planning board procedures. Last year, the council unanimously passed Thrive Montgomery 2050 despite massive public opposition, a critical report from racial equity and social justice consultant, and a strong Department of Environmental Protection warning of damage Thrive's smart growth approach could do to the environment. Many residents felt excluded by this process and subordinated to powerful financial interests that too often had the council's ear. The forced resignation of the entire planning board increased public distrust and placed the new board with no aspersions on them under a cloud. And then the Attorney General recently ruled that 3 new planning board members were sworn in before the county executive approved or vetoed their appointments in clear violation of state law. So this is the environment in which we exist. Right now, we must ask how transparent the development review process will be, what will be the role of affected stakeholders, and when can they weigh in? Only at the first meeting with the developers or later on do they have any say? When will the amendments and public notice be allowed or required, and under what rules? How will the process prevent ex parte communications and deals with interested parties, which may have occurred previously, but we don't know because no official report has been published. We just hope that the executive agencies with knowledge can weigh into these processes and that affected residents will have the opportunity before you finally tweak the development review process. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you, Ms. Joyce, for joining us. Up next, we have Mr. Casey Anderson of No Little Plans LLC.
Hi, nice to see you. I've only got 2 minutes, so I'm just going to get right into it. I have 3 points to make. The first is I subscribe to everything NAP had to say, particularly on the question of providing one signature on record plats. It doesn't seem to me that there's any purpose to be served by requiring both the DPS director and the planning board chair and or the planning director to sign off on those Mylars. It just slows down the process by, sometimes it's a couple days, but there's a painless way to increase the efficiency of the process. Secondly, I think that the degree to which there's duplication or overlap of effort between the executive branch agencies and MNC PPC is wildly exaggerated. Certainly, there are some cases where there is overlap, but I think that the key point is that functions which implicate the way that development is physically oriented on a building site should be within a single agency, and almost all of them are within the planning department today. So, for example, environmental review, forest conservation is appropriate in the planning department because when you make a decision about which trees have to be saved, you're implicitly making decisions about where buildings can be located. And it'd be very difficult, if not impossible, to take that out of the planning department and give it to DEP or DPS, because then you've basically made a lot of the decisions about site design, which is the core function of the planning department and its design team, who are highly professional and expert. I think everyone would agree. I do have one minor suggestion as to one function which could be moved in that vein, and that is review of stormwater concept plans, which are currently within DPS. And there's nothing, I want to be clear, I think that the stormwater concept plans are handled in a highly professional and efficient manner by staff who have extensive experience. The problem is that they drive the site design process. Last point, and then I'll stop talking. I think that I would focus, if I were serving in the General Assembly, on SHA's role in reviewing access, because SHA should not be in the business of effectively making local land use decisions in the name of congestion management. I'll be submitting some written testimony that elaborates on these points. Thanks so much for your time.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Up next, we have Kimberlyn Prasad.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak on the development review process. As a resident of Wheaton and former president of Wheaton Regional Park Neighborhood Association, I have been a witness to the lack of diverse, equitable, and inclusive public outreach, especially as it pertains to Thrive 2050 and the University Corridor Plan. Wheaton is an underserved community of color. With this understanding, planning's approach to public outreach has to be intentional. Planning has to actively engage these communities. Why? Because they don't have computers, they may not have internet access. If they have a computer, they may not have a printer, and as you know, cartridges are expensive, which is why copies of documents should be readily available for residents to pick up. So the staff's over-reliance on social media does not work in underserved communities. Also in this community, people work 6 days a week. We have a large Orthodox Jewish community whose Sabbath is on Saturday, so holding meetings on Saturday does not work for this community. Then you have public hearings being held in the middle of the day. People are working and they may not have the luxury or the privilege to leave work. However, what has been acceptable to this institution is allowing lobbyists and nonprofits backed by developers to speak for us while denying people of color a seat at the table. To paraphrase Councilmember Navarro, you can no longer set a plan without involving the people who are going to be impacted. This institution is notorious for throwing out numbers of the people they've reached. If those numbers don't reflect what this community looks like, if the public hearings don't reflect who lives in the community, then this institution has failed to do public outreach. It has failed to comply with its own equity agenda of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Lastly, as part of the process, planning staff should be professional, unbiased, and above reproach. They should not be on Twitter talking about residents. They should not be on Twitter refuting the county executive. Basically, their personal views should not be known to the public because it undermines their professional credibility and taints the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Prasad. And I'm sorry, that's Ms. Prasad of Epic of MoCo. Sorry, I just want to give everyone's title, like, you know, what they're affiliated with when they come up. Karen Metchis of Climate Coalition of MoCo, formerly Climate Action Plan Coalition. Sure,
Hello.
whenever you're ready.
Pardon?
I said whenever you're ready.
Okay. I'm representing the Climate Coalition Montgomery County, an organization with 20 member organizations. The county's climate action plan was adopted more than 2 years ago with the goal to ensure robust, speaking fast has got me a little flustered here. The county's climate action plan was adopted more than 2 years ago, and our goal is to ensure its robust and equitable implementation to address the dire impacts of climate change. The CAP contains many actions related to development review that are the responsibility of Park and Planning and several county agencies. I urge you to review it. The Climate Coalition was also instrumental in helping to pass a bill requiring the Planning Board to conduct climate assessments of all master plans and ZTAs to decrease emissions and build resilience. Master plans are vision documents, so it is incumbent upon you to ensure that development actually comports with the spirit and intent of this legislation. We have to ask, is the county and the planning board giving enough climate consideration during development? And we think that the design of new buildings and the continued loss of green space is failing to consider resilience to extreme heat and flooding for the people who live, work, and commute here. One example is a 300-foot tall building in Bethesda in my neighborhood that reflects sunlight and significant heat and creates an urban heat island. It is essential that we rely not only on the letter of the law, but that we all take seriously the intent. We are all at risk of extreme heat, flooding, pests, and disease. Our supply chains are at risk, including disruption of where our food and water comes from. We must not wait for what is required, allowing projects to slip through the cracks. We are not experts in real estate development, but we are experts in what is going on in the climate, what is happening to the people. So please incorporate the letter and spirit of the Climate Action Plan in the development review process. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Up next, we have Dennis O'Brien, who's here as an individual.
Thank you for your time today. Okay. Thank you for your time today. My name is Dennis O'Brien. My wife Catherine and I are 38-year residents of Montgomery County. While currently I am retired from a career primarily as a life science executive, I'm still active in mentoring startup companies in Montgomery County and overall in Maryland as well, through my current involvement with the Maryland Tech Council and past efforts with TACO. I support your stated desire to make Montgomery County more economically desirable to do business in. Today, though, I would like to highlight something personal that did not work at all in the planning process, namely notification of longtime standing residents of material rezoning of adjacent properties. So it seems to be a common theme. My example is the planning development process for the parcel at 9801 Georgia Avenue. The parcel, originally zoned as R60, was granted a special exemption some 50 years ago to incorporate a medical professional building into an already established community. While I was not living here at that time, I assume impacted residents of the community were notified and were well aware and involved in the process. Recently, that same parcel was rezoned to CRT under the sector plan update process for Montgomery Hills and Forest Glen, and an adjacent residential street with longstanding single-family homes, Woodland Drive, has now been coded as an urban road in the area a red zone where, I'm told, traffic congestion concerns are essentially not relevant. But here is where the development planning process went off the rails. There were no physical signs posted at the property location alerting those who live nearby about the potential rezoning envisioned within the sector plan, nor was there any physical mailing done, none. Many residents, especially long-term residents, do not actively follow such processes online and only become aware of proposed material changes to their neighborhoods through physical notifications. That physical trigger leads to reading the 100-plus page document online, which then leads to public engagement. This is bad form, really bad form, and has left at least this one time, long-time Montgomery County citizen pretty feeling disenfranchised. Thank you for your time.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Next up, we've got Lloyd Gersey. And you're here as an individual. Yep, please, whenever you feel like it, go for it.
I'm Lloyd Gersey. As to the code and amenities, for the optional method, amenity points are way too easily and cheaply met in large projects. Defined terms in the code, such as amenity open space, common open space, and public open space, may look okay on paper, but in reality, they're applied too elastically in favor of developers and insensitivity to the actual space provided to the public. The big picture is the public is not getting the meaningful and useful open space that it expects. Patios that serve commercial areas, internals, sidewalks, out-of-the-way areas, sparse areas should not count. At times, the ZTA process is too generalized and sweeping and fails to take into account a range of local conditions with unintended negative consequences such as gentrification, cut-through traffic, parking fights, assumed but unavailable transit, and runoff. Complex planning issues need to be done through context-sensitive plans specific to individual local areas that allow careful consideration of the complexities. This is particularly going to be the case in implementing Thrive. Lastly, the Planning Board needs to meaningfully address the concerns expressed at hearings on development plans by nearby residents. A common situation is that staff presents a report, the developer makes self-serving statements about the project, and then the residents state why they would like to see it changed. Routinely, by a mere board vote of approval, many of the residents' concerns are rejected without truly being appreciated. No meaningful and rational explanation is provided for the recommendations. What the public wants is a response to our concerns. They may not all be accepted, I understand that, but simply voting them down 4-1 or 5-0 is not acceptable at all. We demand to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gersey. And the last individual that we have signed up to speak is Daniel Mayer, there we go.
I came here to just ask this group to address the inconsistency and contradictory decisions by the staff in their staff reports. And I give as an example 8045 Newell Street Condominium Association et al. Versus Montgomery County Planning Board, civil case number 378604. And the judge, and I have the court order here, spent 9 pages criticizing Park and Planning for their peculiar behavior. In that case, the condominium association was required to adhere to a setback as interpreted by the staff. But years later, an adjacent parcel, its developer didn't wish to comply with that. And the staff report went along with it. And so as you examine the way this entity works, that is an issue I think you need to address. If the staff report interprets the regulation and zoning laws, et cetera, in one manner for a developer, it should be consistent. And I believe the court agreed with me. So I'll follow up the details in my written documents, but I think if you're going to focus on something, you need to focus on that particularly. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Okay, we have 4 folks here who have signed in but did not necessarily indicate that they wanted to speak. And so I do want to provide them the opportunity to come up for 2 minutes if they would like. It's Carol Tomeko, Helen Gray, Betty Blackney, and Monica Bradford. So if you would like to speak, come on down.
Good afternoon. I'm Carol Tomeko, 47-year person living in the Forest Glen area. The complication that we're facing with the development on the corner of Forest Glen and Georgia Avenue is a significant traffic potential disaster for our entire neighborhood. What I would like to know is why it's not possible to postpone the actual beginning of this process until the following 5 things are looked into. Number 1, the eastern entrance to the metro is built. Number 2, the Beltway exit entrance is designed and built. Number 3, the 16th Street to Forest Glen improvements are complete. Number 4, the water and sewage and electric lines are in place. And 5 and last, a believable plan for car, pedestrian, bike, rolling, ambulance, fire truck, school buses, and delivery trucks is presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tomeko. Any last of the remaining 3 like to speak? Speak now or forever hold your peace, at least until the written testimony is collected, I guess. No? All right. Well, with that, we'll conclude our public listening session. Again, we will have one more, our third and final one. That's August the 2nd. It's a Wednesday from 6 to 8. It's virtual. We tried to plan these in various locations at various times of day to provide everyone an opportunity. And we've gotten some really robust comments back, I think. So thank you, everyone here, for making time out of your day to prioritize this and come to speak with us. I know I can speak on behalf of everyone here in the work group that your testimony is taken in earnest. It's taken very seriously as we move forward with figuring out what the best plans are. As I said, October 15th is the deadline for this work group and this phase of things, but I'm confident that the work will continue on in various formats. October 15th is my deadline to introduce any type of state legislation, so that's not an arbitrary thing. That's when I have to introduce things. That's why it's a bit compressed to work during the summer. But again, this is in some ways the beginning of a conversation with some of you, or another point of the conversation with many of you, and we look forward to moving things forward and including your input. So thank you again for coming out, whether you're here in person or here virtually. Yeah. Cool.
Thank you, Dr.